Welcome to the Charles Carroll Society Show. I am your host, the self-appointed Bard of the American Redoubt. Today we have a great show. We will be interviewing Brittany Pettibone. The spiritual Christian praise song was censored by Facebook because it had political overtures. And get this, a quote from Mother Teresa was banned from Twitter.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, and most recently you had Laura Loomer's been completely just annihilated. From every platform except Telegram. Same with Milo Yiannopoulos. I believe maybe he's still on YouTube actually, and then has Telegram, but pretty much everywhere else. And then Paul Joseph Watson was banned from Instagram and Facebook. That's a huge following. Tommy Robinson banned from Facebook. He had a massive following. And Alex Jones has been all but purged from the internet. They're just getting bolder and bolder and bolder. And you still have, though, people on the right who are like, they can do what they want, private company. It's like, do you not understand the totalitarian nature of what's going on here? You basically have the wrong opinion, which is not in any way hateful, and they can purge you. Did you see these graphs that came out recently? I think Tim Pool tweeted them, where it showcased that since the 90s, the left has moved about 10 times farther to the left.
Yes.
And the right has basically maintained a consistent position. So we're not the ones being radicalized, it's the left. We just look far right. I mean, everybody does because they're so far left now.
You know, by the way, one of the reasons I think they're moving far left like that is because they believe that they're winning. So when you begin to win, you begin to you get to push harder in the game, and that's what I believe this. So Infowars, Alex Jones, Paul Joseph, Milo Yiannopoulos, and by the way, it's funny, Louis Farrakhan was kicked off. Louis Farrakhan it's very interesting. Louis Farrakhan, like the Black Israelites, like the new Black Panther Party, are a black racial supremacist organizations.
But as long as he's not inciting violence against people, doing illegal stuff, let him speak.
But Louis Farrakhan reminds me of another guy, the guy who runs American Renaissance. And American Renaissance is taking, I think, Google to court, which is a very interesting. PragerU is taking Google to court, which is very good, and so is the guy who.
Gavin McInnes is suing the SPLC. Laura Loomer is suing Twitter and CARE. There's a couple lawsuits going on here.
And one of the things I don't like additional regulation because you always ask, oh my goodness, what they can do what they want. One of the things, this is to the best of my knowledge, so every time you talk to a journalist, oh, you got this wrong. Well, this is to the best of my knowledge. To the best of my knowledge, social media platforms are organized under the law that governs telecommunication, because when they came up, they were telecommunication companies. If I pick up the phone and call you and say, I hate you, and pick up and close the phone, the cops may come to me, but the telephone company cannot be sued.
Right.
Because they are a neutral platform. Yeah. No, so what the thing that the court needs to, the thing that the Congress needs to do is say, if you are so large and if you are so big, then if you aren't neutral, then you should have your ability to be sued removed, your protection from suit removed, and then
they can't use that as an excuse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Either these guys have to act as publishers, where they are saying this is what's appropriate, or they have to give people their constitutional rights in America.
Platforms or publishers, pick one.
Right. It's absolutely. So have you ever? There has been, we've talked about this massive attempt to silence one. One of the newest things that came out was one of the guys, he actually gave me a shot, Nick, what was his name? You actually wrote a tweet about Nick.
Nick Monroe. Oh yeah, he's wonderful.
Awesome. Nick, thank you, bro, for giving me that tweet, because he gave me a tweet. He's like, you guys gotta check this dude out. And I was like, and of course my Twitter account grew like this, and then Twitter just removed all the users. It literally just went through, I mean, it was up for and they just removed, but Nick is cool people. I've never met him, but he seems to be really cool people.
Yeah, he actually came to Austria once, so I met him there, and yeah, he's a really great guy, very, very smart.
So Nick, he actually, I found it through him and Tim Cass also, and this other guy came out with this incredible, Dr. What is that, Eoin
Lenihan.
You have a better education. I plead public education.
I'm not very good at reading names.
But what's incredible is he said he mapped this out. Now the reason this is, now of course I say take it out, take this with a grain of salt, understood. But what he did, which is unlike what the dark web did, no one identified themselves as part of the dark web or whatever. People were just talking to people and they just put these lines together. What he did is he found a whole bunch of verified, self-identified, anti-fascist accounts. Now, why is that important? The Proud Boys and Gavin McInnes have been kicked off of Twitter but the Antifa are just as violent or more violent, and they have actually been designated a domestic terror organization by the FBI. Well, the Proud Boys have not.
Have they, or is that just in one state? I think it was just one of the 50 states. I don't remember which one.
Well, somebody has it. You're correct. Okay, for that, I stand corrected as it. But he found it. So these guys are all here, and of course, when Tim Cass interviewed the head of Twitter, they said, "Oh, we don't know who they are. They're what." We went right.
They don't have a leader. They're not, and he's like, they have branded accounts. They're selling merchandise.
Right.
These people just
on your platform.
Trying.
No, they don't know that they're trying. These people want to support the far left. And they want to wage war against the far right.
Yeah, I think what this showcases is the social interaction between these accounts. So obviously, a lot of it is positive. It's these people on the same side. Of course, a small portion of it could be negative. But I do also take it with a grain of salt because we saw this Data and Society report, which was just a load of crap. And but there is a lot that you see, as you mentioned, they actually in their bios say we are Antifa.
Right.
So they are self-identifying as this.
You don't identify as a member of the alt-right currently. You don't identify as somebody as a white nationalist or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they do. And he went to the count and said, these people identify. And the anti-fascists, for just Americans who don't know, these guys call themselves anti-fascists. They are communist black shirts. They are thugs.
They throw you off by saying we're anti-fascist. But what actually do you stand for? And a lot of them are communists.
They're communist anarchists. They are absolute. They are black shirts, and they are in the streets, and they are doing what they do. And so that's what they do. Hurt people.
They've also now, this new thing I'm sure you saw, they're throwing milkshakes on them. So Sargon just today got a milkshake thrown on him, and Tommy has had 2 thrown on him. Okay, and they're saying here, I mean, at the very least, battery. You know, like throwing a milkshake on someone. They're saying, oh, it's nothing, it's all in good fun. Why are you guys such big babies? And it's like, well, when Jeremy Corbyn had an egg thrown on him, the person was put in prison for like 28 days or something like that. So it's like one rule for us and another for you is basically what they're saying. And I remember after Tommy Robinson was milkshaked, the guy who had thrown the milkshake on him, the mainstream media were writing these puff pieces about him, you know, and oh no, he's receiving death threats now. I mean, that I condemn that if he is in fact receiving death threats, but just the fact that they can't even acknowledge that what he did was wrong and trying to prop him up as some kind of like hero, it's completely, it's despicable.
It is not good. And the concept is that these journalists, they use their Twitter accounts, it leads directly to threats and violence against people. And I don't know if they've looked at this, but here's in our world, we always talk about on this podcast, we always talk about what can we do about it. Do you have any idea why they are so threatening? Why they are so focused on you? Why they're so focused? Do you have any idea? It's not just because you're.
Sometimes I ask myself the same question because I'm not by any means the biggest of the right-wing YouTubers. There are many more that have far more followers than me. So, but ever since the beginning, they've had this kind of fixation about writing articles about me, slandering me, and I just don't understand why.
So, something called the UNCTAD, UNCTAD, in its most recent World Investment Report shows that there is a 23% reduction in the world's flow of foreign direct investment in different countries. The concept is that there are people are actually changing their minds about the value of globalization. So I don't know if you've ever heard this, but there's a guy named Danny Roderick, D-A-N-I. He published a blog article titled The Inescapable Trilemma of the World Economy. He followed that up with a book titled The Globalization Paradox, published in 2011. The Harvard professor Danny Roderick formulated his famous impossibly theorem, or the trilemma, as he calls it. It says that democracy, or self-representation, national sovereignty, and global economic integration are mutually incompatible. We can combine any 2 of the 3, but we can never have all 3 simultaneously and full. Mm-hmm. He wrote that 12 years ago. And I've noticed that a lot of people have quoted this article, have talked about this article. Another guy named Paul Tucker's book called Unelected Power, Central Banking Has Drifted into Being or Always Was. This is his comment. Not a far-right guy. This is, by the way, Danny Roderick is a Harvard professor, left. I don't know his politics actually, but he doesn't come off as any type of a right-wing or conservative. He said this. Paul Tucker's the same way. He said this in his book. He said, central banking has drifted into being, or always was, a vehicle serving the interests of a globalized metropolitan elite. Policy by and for the Davos man. And so their theory, if you look at this trilemma, it says that there's 3 things that are happening. self-representation, self-control of your own government, national sovereignty, strong borders, American first type concept, or global integration. He says you can only have two. Guess what they've decided? And I believe you read through all the articles and people writing these papers, and sure enough, you see these people are going, yeah, maybe this is true. Some people say it's not true, but some people say, because the concept is that national sovereignty, if I can vote and I have national sovereignty, then I don't want my farms to go, I don't want my farming to go over here. I don't want my manufacturing to go to China.
Of course.
And by the way, it's everywhere. You tell stories, and not every immigrant is like this, but you tell stories. In Mexico, before NAFTA, they had wine country. They grew apples. But guess what? It's a lot easier to grow apples in Washington State than in the middle of the desert. So their apples weren't as good and they cost more. But when NAFTA came in, the guy has 4 kids, had a nice small community, and no more apples. And so this guy comes to him and says, your wife's looking at you and you got 4 kids looking at you, and he's like, I don't know what to do. I was just doing my job. And he go, there's a place called Washington that has a lot of apple business now. And they're like, where the president lives? No, a different Washington. And they pack up. You can go through big parts of Mexico and there are no men in the towns because they all have gone where the work is gone. So, but if you had national sovereignty and democracy, I don't want to go live in Washington. I'm going to have a home here, have a place. And so everyone is like that. So there's 3 things they can have. The guys who oppose you, guess what of these 3 things they decided that they got to get rid of?
The national sovereignty.
And anyone, that is correct, that's my opinion, and anyone who supports national sovereignty in any way has to be demonized. And in my opinion, this is where you and others have an issue, and that they've come up and people have come, because the concept is that anyone who speaks about national sovereignty has to be silenced. Google understands national sovereignty. Facebook's they don't like national sovereignty. They like a more globalist environment. And I believe that's what undercuts them. And one of the things you can take home, and it's very interesting to me, is that you are successful. If you weren't successful, you'd be like a lot of other groups on the right. They would ignore you. They don't really need to deal with you. You just sit around in your meetings and talk about how you, whatever, but you don't. But if you are effective at getting your word out, if you are actually trying to change that, actually starting to move who's investing where and how people are seeing immigration, that's not going to stand, because this goes against our Davos man who runs everything. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for coming by. Can you give us any our audience any super sensitive secret information about what comes next in Brittany Pettibone's life?
Actually, I'm working on another book, and this one will be political. I am writing about my experiences in politics since I started up until now. And the reason that I want to do this is because I know that our stories are going to be written one way or the other by us or people that hate us, like the mainstream media slandering me all day long. So I thought that it would be very important to just put my story out there, and of course it kind of intertwines with a lot of other people in the right-wing network. So it should be pretty interesting. Been through a lot, so hopefully people enjoy it. That'll be my next thing, but I'm not doing any other big projects because obviously I'm getting married pretty soon, so we'll keep it at that.
That's a pretty big project.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for coming on. Have a good one.
Thank you.